Your physical and mental health rely heavily on your ability to get enough sleep. If you don't get a good night's rest, you're probably putting yourself at risk for heart disease, kidney failure, high blood pressure, stroke, and in extreme cases, even death. So that's why it's really important for adults to get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night in order to function at your best. I know for me, I have a problem sleeping at nighttime. I don't get enough rest, I'm always tired. But you know what, let's have a little bit of fun with this one. So the next time you're caught sleeping in class, just tell your teachers that you're taking care of your health. Well, how's it going, YouTube? I'm your host for this one, Landon Dowlatsingh, and welcome back to another most amazing top 10 video. If you guys are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We have just passed 5 million subscribers, so I just want to say thank you guys so much. It's been an incredible run. It's been insane, and you know what? We're only getting started. And you know what? I want to interact with you guys on this one, so let me ask you guys this. What do you guys do to try to make yourselves fall asleep at nighttime? Let me know your answers in the comment section below. I'm pretty curious. And what do you guys think I should try to fall asleep? Because I have a pretty bad problem. Alright, let's get right into this list. This is the top 10 scary sleep experiment stories. Starting us off in at number 10 with the 201 hour sleep deprivation experiment. Back in 1959, a radio DJ wanted to perform a publicity stunt for a charity event. He decided to stay awake for 200 hours, and he broadcasted the entire thing on his radio show. He was monitored by scientists who monitored his vitals because he needed to take a lot of stimulants to stay awake. He sat in a booth in Times Square where people could pledge money, but his innocent experiment quickly turned dangerous. After being awake for several hours, he wasn't able to do simple math problems, recite the alphabet, and he began to hallucinate.
Mean body temperature progressively declined over this period of time, and the lower it went, the crazier he got.
He thought the scientists were conspiring to kill him, so he literally drove himself mad. He stayed awake for 201 hours, but he was drugged for the majority of the event.
After staying awake for 201 hours, Tripp finally went to bed and slept for 24.
Some people say that his experiment affected him permanently, and soon afterwards he lost his job and his wife divorced him. A controversial reality TV show is at number 9. Okay, don't worry, I'm not talking about Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I haven't been keeping up with them. In 2004, a British reality TV show called Shattered was aired for millions of people to watch. Basically, there's 10 contestants that signed up to be locked up in an abandoned shopping center for 7 days, but they had to stay awake and compete in challenges throughout the show. Sounds like my worst nightmare, or it kind of reminds me of the movie Dawn of the Dead, but without zombies. Claire Southern eventually won this horrible contest, and she actually managed to stay awake for 178 hours. She was awarded with £97,000, which in Canada, that's a lot of money. That might be worth it for me. But she was mentally and physically tortured. I don't know if I can deal with that part of it. A show like Shattered would not stand a chance being aired today. A lot of people complain about the show because it is highly unethical and demoralizing. With that being said, let's watch a clip.
It's very difficult. This is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life.
The time of greatest struggle for our participants is between 1 and 3 a.m, when your mind automatically attempts to prepare your body for sleep. It's the perfect time for the nightly You Snooze, You Lose challenge, when one person must face a task deliberately designed to push them towards the land of Nod. So far, only one person has cracked.
Number 8 brings us to exploding head syndrome. Yeah, this is actually a real thing, but it's not actually what you think. Exploding head syndrome is a type of parasomnia. People with this condition have a hallucination of a really loud noise while they're falling asleep or when they're waking up. Even though exploding head syndrome isn't dangerous, it can be extremely frustrating. It would terrify me, and people who are affected by this, they might develop a fear of sleeping or an anxiety disorder. Up next, number 7 is sleep deprived puppies. This next sleep experiment will leave you guys with nightmares. A Russian physician and scientists performed a sleep deprivation experiment on a bunch of puppies back in 1894 to study the effects of sleep deprivation on the body. The scientists reported that after a few days, the puppies who were forced to stay awake died. She also reported that severe lesions occurred in the brain. Okay, wow, this scientist is worse than Cruella de Vil. If that wasn't enough, 2 other scientists wanted to perform a very similar experiment. They kept dogs awake by walking them, and they quickly realized that all of the dogs who were sleep deprived died after 9 to 17 days. The Russian sleep experiment takes us to number 6. We've talked about this sleep experiment many times on this channel. Well, this is a highly debated and controversial subject because some people believe that the Russian sleep experiment was just a hoax, while others believe that this is a huge government conspiracy. What do you guys think? But essentially, this was a sleep deprivation experiment that took place during World War II. Russian scientists performed a series of unethical, unmoral, and horrifying experiments on 5 political prisoners that can be compared to a modern-day horror story. The prisoners were locked in a gas chamber where a form of experimental gas was pushed through the vents in order to prevent them from sleeping. It was the goal of this experiment to observe all of their behaviors and conversations through one-way mirrors to see how sleep deprivation would affect humans. The intent was to keep them awake for a period of 30 days, which is absolutely insane. Lack of sleep affects your immune system, and you know what? This takes us to number 5. Ain't that feeling when you're about to get sick? You just know your week is going to be awful. For me, I know I'm getting sick when my allergies are just crazy. So it really surprises me that 164 healthy people signed up for a sleep study where they would be exposed to the common cold. Okay, let me explain. Scientists collected nightly sleep data from these 164 people for 1 week. They were quarantined in a hotel and given nose drops that contained the rhinovirus, which is responsible for the common cold. And then they studied how people would cope with the cold based on their sleep patterns. They discovered that people who slept for less than 5 hours a night were 4.5 times more likely to get sick than those who slept for 7 hours or more. So the moral of the story here is make sure you guys go to bed early tonight and get those 7 hours in. If you're late for school, tell your teachers you're working on your mental health. You are getting some sleep. I don't know if they can, yeah, you probably don't do that. You get in trouble. The world record for sleep deprivation takes us to number 4. Let's travel back in time to December 1963 when 2 boys came up with an idea for their science project, and their science project landed on this list. Well, they wanted to beat out the world record for staying awake for the longest. At the time, the record was held by a DJ who managed to stay up for 260 hours, or just under 11 days. I don't know who their science teacher was, but I'm pretty sure he shouldn't have approved this experiment. How stupid. I mean, it sounds dangerous to me, but they carried on with their experiment anyways, and the one boy managed to stay awake for 264 hours with no sleep. After the experiment ended, he was taken to a naval hospital where his brainwaves were studied, and they found out that even though he was technically awake, parts of his brain were napping and restoring itself. The Guinness Book of World Records stopped certifying attempts to stay up the longest because they believe it can be dangerous to people's health, which I find pretty ironic because they still let people eat glass and lay on bed of nails, and there's a lot of dangerous stuff in that book. So if you get rid of some dangerous, you should get rid of all dangerous. But maybe that's just me. Moving up this list or down this list, depending on how you see it. Next up, we're at number 3 with prison sleep deprivation. As a way to attempt to brainwash prisoners, guards would force prisoners to stay awake for long periods of time. The North Koreans used this tactic on American prisoners of war during the Korean War, and the CIA is even guilty of doing this too. Psychologists have said that false memories can occur with sleep deprivation, so that's why interrogators will keep their suspects awake so that they can hopefully create a false memory and confess to a crime. Or prisoners will just keep their prisoners awake as a form of modern day torture. Probably one of the worst ways to be tortured. Sleep paralysis comes onto this list at number 2. Sleep paralysis is when your mind is awake but your body is still asleep. So basically you feel like you're paralyzed while laying in bed, and sometimes you will see or hear things that aren't there. I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys. It's actually happened to me a few times. According to one user on Reddit, one night they woke up because they heard footsteps in their hallway. She was lying on her back, and when she tried to get up to see if someone was coming, she actually couldn't move. She started to panic, but she couldn't move or speak, but the footsteps got louder and louder. She said that she couldn't see anyone, but she knew that someone was invading her house. She can even feel him standing on the other side of the bed staring at her, and she said that she can hear him breathing, and apparently this feeling lasted for hours. Government mind control tactics tops our list in at number 1. Project MKULTRA is a code name that was given to a number of illegal experiments that were done on human subjects. These experiments were done so that scientists can identify and develop drug procedures that could be used in interrogations in order to weaken the person or force confessions through mind control. MKULTRA used a ton of different methods to alter the brain. They would often give people LSD and other chemicals, use hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and physical abuse, and other forms of torture. The scary thing is that these experiments took place in the 1950s, so it wasn't really that long ago when you think about it. I mean, my dad was born about 4 years after that. Well, there you guys have it. You made it to the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for 5 million subscribers. It's just incredible. Well, that's it for this. I'll see you guys all in the next most amazing top 10 video.